All right, guys, I just want to welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we're doing our full Week 5 preview and predictions for a monster slate going down here in mid-September. A couple of nice games on Friday night, and then we'll drift into Saturday. Get everything started with Florida State and Virginia, 6.5-point line in favor of the Noles. This is a team that a lot of people feel like are back, and they're going to compete at a high level after an upset victory over Alabama back in Week 1. And then the last few weeks, they've been teeing off on weaker opponents that have significantly skewed these numbers up to 363 rushing yards per game and 58 points per contest. For Florida State, they're going to be led by a handful of transfer additions. Tommy Castellanos, he's a phenomenal player, especially with his rushing ability, nice elusiveness, a lot of speed in the open field. He runs this Gus Malzahn offense to a T. He's also got some speed next to him in Gavin Sawchuk. Jalen Lucas is a nice Swiss Army knife. Makai Danzy, a freshman breakout player who's been great through the air and on the ground, averaging over 30 yards per play. You have Deuce Robinson as well. This is a nice wide receiver, has plenty of size, is 6'6", 220. You're going up against a Virginia team that's gotten a handful of conference games under their belt, 48-20 victory over Stanford, and then they lost, that is, to NC State on the road back in Week 2 in a bit of a shootout where their defense had issues, 200-plus rushing and 200-plus passing they allowed in that one. This is a group that I think has respectable talent. Mitchell Milton, Daniel Rickert on the defensive line, Jacob Holmes at D tackle. I like Landon Danley. More importantly, James Jackson's a great leader at linebacker. I definitely have concerns about this secondary, but Florida State's not going to really be a team that's going to pick you apart, from drop back passing and just sitting in the pocket. Uh, Even though Virginia, if they can look to put FSU in a lot of these third and long situations, they could have success because I do like their pass rushers. But I think for Florida State, Nick, this is a team that the jury's still out on them. They beat Alabama, exploiting their weaknesses, and I think that was more about the Tide than it was FSU being a back per se. And I still think that the rushing attack, when they're not as strong, how are they going to do? Because when they run the ball well, they're able to slip it behind your head through the air. And then on defense, it's mainly some of the same guys from last year: Justin Cryer, Ashland Barker, some of the newer guys who are stepping up. Earl Little Jr. has been tremendous at safety. Darrell Jackson Jr., a veteran defensive tackle. I pick Virginia to win this game outright because I think they're going to play well on defense. It's not going to be perfect by any means. I don't expect them to completely get scorched on the ground, and that's going to be the key factor to keep them into this game. And then through the air, Chandler Morris, phenomenal transfer additions, putting on clinics weekly, 71% comp rate, over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's protecting the football. They've been incredibly strong on third down as well, especially in that game against NC State. The offense did stall out a little bit in the second half, but they were 13 of 19 in that game on third, 57% overall this year. I mean, they're very comfortable, Nick, in tough situations. They're going to be at home here against a questionable secondary for me. Trell Harris is coming off a big game. Cam Ross is a nice veteran out of the slot. Jamal Edrine as well. They have talent in the backfield. Jamari Taylor, Xavier Brown, a couple of dual threat backs, and then Harrison Whaley is a nice slasher as well, who I didn't even know they had until a couple of days ago. This is a very good Virginia offense, Nick. I think they're going to upset Florida State. I've seen this way too many times, especially in the ACC, where these teams come in with a high ranking and they just turn in a sluggish performance. And I think Virginia, led by Tony Elliott, they're going to take some risks if they have the opportunity to. They need some big wins. And this is going to be a victory for Virginia, defeating number 8 FSU.
This is a big game to start the slate here. I really like what we have on Friday night. There's two really good matchups on Friday night. We start with the one in Charlottesville. I think it's a very intriguing matchup. I think these are two very talented teams that have a lot going forward to them in the ACC. Florida State obviously off to a pretty hot start, beating down some pretty bad teams in East Texas A&M and Kent State after beating up on Alabama in Week 1 in what was a coming out party of sorts for this team. As for the Virginia Cavaliers, they beat two bad teams in their own right in Coastal Carolina and William and Mary before they ended up winning a conference game against Stanford and then losing at NC State in what was a very close and strong game on September 6th, a good matchup between two solid teams in the conference. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that was a weeknight game as well. So a really good matchup overall from them. They got a good battle in the beginning of the season in conference play. Now you look at this matchup on a Friday night. It's a very intriguing matchup between two teams that are very talented across the board. Virginia clearly a pass-heavy offense, while Florida State's a run-heavy offense. Florida State 7.07 yards per attempt on the ground, 17 rushing touchdowns, and over 1,000 yards so far this season. Really impressive numbers. Now, they do have 7 passing touchdowns from Castellanos and about 800 yards from him, but he's still more of a running quarterback. It's really sort of his bread and butter. They have 5 different guys with over 100 yards rushing so far this season. including the receiver Danzy, who is leading the way with 175 and 3 scores. They use him in jet sweeps, sort of different. They kind of change things up here. They get him involved, and he has really been able to really do a lot there. Samuel Singleton has been really good on the ground, 168 and 3 scores, while Sawchek has 160 yards and 5 scores. The quarterback has 140 and 3 as well. So they're spreading out the wealth here. They're really solid on the ground. They don't really seem to have that top wide receiver. Deuce Robinson is probably that guy, about 200 yards on 8 grabs, 2 touchdowns for him, but nothing super special. The rest of the depth chart in terms of pass catchers is really shallow. I mean, they don't have many guys that are grabbing passes out there and really being that dominant. So I think this is a rush attack first offense for Florida State in this matchup here. The weather looks to be favorable for that. They thrive in situations where the weather's a little sloppy. Looks like thunderstorms and showers are going to be going down Friday night in Charlottesville, so I think that certainly benefits Florida State, who like to run the ball, like to have the ball on the ground and keep the ball out of harm's way. As Virginia, 45.5 points per game so far this season, pretty good, 7.17 yards per play. That is through the air, about 6 yards per attempt on the ground, just over 1,000 yards rushing, and 13 scores for them as well. But the big difference, 1,200 yards passing so far, 9 touchdowns to 2 interceptions on the season. I think that's a really solid start for this team. They're able to throw the ball and have success doing it. Chandler Morris is plugged in pretty well to this offense. I figured he would be a decent fit, but I didn't know exactly how good of a fit he was going to be. I think I'm pretty happy with what he looks like so far. I think he's a quarterback that can clearly lead the way for this team into conference play. 71% comp rate, over 1,000 yards passing, 8 touchdowns to 1 pick. He's got a lot of different players he likes to throw to. Harris, Ross, Edrin, all have over 15 grabs, all have over 170 yards as well. So they're certainly getting involved. They're spreading the wealth here. I think when you look at it, this is a defense for Virginia, giving up 19.5 points per game, 3.34 yards per attempt on the ground, 7 touchdowns, about 400 yards. I think they're going to have a bad day on the ground here. I think they'll get beat in on the ground by this Florida State rushing attack that I think is still really strong. I was torn over the spread. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Florida State ultimately wins by 7, 8 points, barely covering that spread. It opened at 7.5, so I might have taken Virginia plus 7.5 at that moment in time. Now down to about 6.5, so I think I'm going to take Florida State ultimately just to run the ball, really have a successful day doing so. Don't put the ball in harm's way. I think it might be a lower scoring affair. I do think the defense will have a solid day here in a sloppy game. But I think UVA will make a mistake or two on offense, put Florida State in good field position, and give the Seminoles a key opening conference victory as they move to 4-0 and really put themselves in a good position to be competitive in that conference.
Going down a couple hours after this one gets started, it's going to be a ranked TCU squad going up against Arizona State. 2.5-point favorites are the Sun Devils. This team's been incredibly scrappy this year. They've been also disrespected after that loss to Mississippi State, where a lot of people didn't think that would be a test for them, and I was worried for them. I thought that was a significant trap game. They ended up losing it, but they had a resilient second half where the defense was locked down. The rushing attack really got going. This is a team in Arizona State that has been able to survive so far. On the road against Baylor, I thought they played quite well. The run game wasn't as efficient. But this is a group that can certainly be effective. Relic Brown, Kyson Brown, Kanye Udo. They have a nice trio. Sam Levitt's been getting his legs involved significantly as well. He hasn't been as good as a passer. He's been making a lot more mistakes, less accurate, not putting out much production. Jordan Tyson, of course, getting every single target still, but they're just not being as effective with those. Shimon Mateer at tight end is a very respectable number 2. After that, though, nobody really catches the ball outside of the running backs. So at some point, we need to figure out this run game. The TCU corners I don't think are all that great, led by Channing Canada, but I love the safeties. Elite duo, Jamel Johnson, Bud Clark. These guys can do damage in coverage or step up against the run for TCU. I think they have more playmakers than we've seen in the past for them on this defense, especially when it comes to Devon and Marcus Deal, the 2 brothers on the defensive line, and they have an elite linebacker, Nabi Obaizor. I think he's tremendous. I'm going to stick with Arizona State in this game. I think at home it's going to be good for them. I think they're going to start to find some more consistency on offense, even though I don't know if this passing attack is really going to improve that much throughout the year. But the defense for ASU is a pretty darn good unit, even with Xavier Alford being out, and he's still going to be in the back end. They're playing well. Adrian Wilson's been stepping up. Miles Ghost Rouser as a patroller is still phenomenal. Jordan Crook and Keyshawn Elliott are very strong linebackers. I think this defensive line is a legit unit, led by CJ Fight, Prince Dorba, Clayton Smith. These guys are very disciplined. They're elite against the run. They were last year as well. TCU, their run game has been a little bit better, but I don't think it's going to overwhelm them by any means. So it's going to be the Josh Hoover show and his pass catchers. Eric McAllister coming off a breakout performance, which I saw coming from a mile away, but I didn't think he'd put up 250 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's playing with house money of how good he has been against an inconsistent cornerback room for Arizona State. They are veterans. Javon Robinson, is the top guy. Him and Keith Abney. They're going to be going up against Jordan Dyer, Joseph Manjack, DJ Rogers. This is a really good passing attack, Nick. I love Josh Hoover. I think this is a guy that if he can win this game, it's going to be on his shoulders. If they win, it's going to be a 300-yard day from him, and he'll be starting to creep his way in the Heisman conversation. I do like this TCU team. I also like Arizona State as well, and I think their defense is a little bit better. They're going to come up with some opportunities like they did against Baylor. That's going to allow them to put things into the end zone just a little bit more to win this game, but I'm really iffy on it.
Yeah, this is certainly an interesting game. I said when I talked about the first game on Friday night that there were two good games on the slate, and this is the second one here. A great matchup in the Big 12. Arizona State, if they had come back and beat Mississippi State, the story with them would be entirely different than they came back from a massive deficit and won on the road in SEC country. I think it's being forgotten that they almost came back and won that game after being down massively, and it really was just for a bad coverage bust on that touchdown that Mississippi State was able to win in the other home stadium. It's very tough to play on the road in the SEC, and those cowbells are no joke. So I think Arizona State is still a legit team. You saw that in a gritty win on the road at Baylor this past week where they were able to get the job done, even though it looked like Baylor might have enough to win that battle. It was a close contest, and Arizona State was able to win it. This is a very talented Sun Devils team, even if they're not playing to the level of a team that went to the College Football Playoff last year. 30 points per game just about isn't quite exactly what you were hoping for. And I think the passing attack is certainly a bit of a problem here so far. Sam Levitt, 61% comp rate, 745 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks. Just not good enough from him, obviously, through the air. They need to do more. And it really is the Jordan Tyson show. I mean, he's got 31 grabs of 350 yards and 5 scores. The next highest pass catcher is the tight end with 13 grabs. I mean, just a ridiculous spread there. Tyson is the entire offense. And I don't know if that's sustainable long term. I think it will cause them problems when push comes to shove. I like what they have on the ground. I think Raleek Brown's really good. Sam Levitt's really solid as well at quarterback. Obviously, he's the 4 rushing touchdowns, 220 yards from him. I've been pretty pleased with that. Kanye Udua is getting more comfortable in the system and really finding a way to produce on the ground. As for the defense, I think the defense has been really solid at times for Arizona State, but also a bit of a question mark. 20.5 points per game, about 3 yards per attempt given up on the ground. Only 2 rushing touchdowns and about 900 yards total. They've given about less than 5 yards per play. Jordan Crook has been really good. Keyshawn Elliott, the two linebackers there, have been great leaders for this team. Over 30 tackles for both of them, 5 TFLs as well, multiple sacks for the two of them. Miles Rouser has been very hard hitting. He's been really solid. 25 total tackles for him, plus a pass breakup and a fumble recovery. I like what he's been able to do. Martell Hughes has stepped up at linebacker as well. And Keith Abney has 4 pass breakups in the secondary. A good leader for that team. As for TCU, I think this is a very talented TCU team. 1,000 yards passing exactly for Josh Hoover right now. 11 touchdowns to 2 picks. 68% comp rate. They're able to spread the wealth and hit a couple different guys at times. They have Dwyer and McAllister who are double-digit receptions for them. Pretty good numbers there as well. Those guys have been really solid. Manjack, DeAndre Rogers, and Ed Small all are close to 10 touchdowns as well. So they're able to get a little bit more versatility, spread the wealth just a little bit more here, which has been good for that offense. In terms of the defense for SMU or TCU, I beg your pardon, 19.7 points per game. The offense is scoring 41.7 points per game, and this offense is pretty high flying. A lot of things lean to me picking TCU here because they have the better offense and the defenses are about even, so I consider that a scratch. But at home here, I'll lean with the home team here. I think Arizona State will run the ball effectively, and they'll have a good day against this run defense for TCU that's been pretty solid at 3.18 yards per attempt on the ground. Something just feels right about Arizona State here. I think they're going to get in a groove, get comfortable, and really put themselves in a good position to get back on track and continue to really be the top team in the Big 12. I think they're in a good spot to win this game and cover that 2.5.
I move to Saturday, getting things started at noon. USC traveling to Illinois. Illinois got completely blasted by Indiana last week, so they're looking to bounce back over a ranked opponent. USC, they got that late game against Michigan State last week. And, the final score is not really vindictive of, I thought, how well their defense played. They were up 31-10 in the third quarter. They got a quick stop on defense. It was 4th and 7. They committed a penalty. So instead of punting, Michigan State went for it on 4th and 2. USC stopped them, but there was 12 men on the field. So Michigan State, the drive continued. They ended up scoring on that drive. And then USC on offense fumbles and gifted Michigan State another touchdown that made it a 7-point game late in the third quarter. And the offense ended up pulling away, and the offense was splendid, and it's been great all year long. Even without Jacoby Lane, Jade Maeva was still incredibly accurate, very productive. USC this year has been very efficient through the air. They've had a lot of big plays, and the run game's also been getting a pretty long leash. Wayman Jordan, Eli Sanders both had 15-plus carries. Mayafa is very lethal in the red zone. This offense is going to be hard to stop, Nick. And if Illinois, who, I didn't think was really worthy of being a top 10 team anyways, I thought they had issues when it comes to talent at wide receiver, and I thought their defensive line was a little underwhelming. It's a blitz-heavy defense as well. Their secondary was getting absolutely cooked. I don't expect Illinois to be as bad as they were against Indiana, but I also thought they probably should have lost that Duke game. But Duke gifted them like 5 turnovers. I mean, so many opportunities they had ended up leading to a blowout victory for Illinois. This is a team that also can't run the football. USC, they've been opportunistic when it comes to their run defense. They have a great pass rush as well, led by a handful of different guys. In the middle, you have Eric Gentry at linebacker. Bishop Fitzgerald at safety has been tremendous. Braylon Shelby's having a breakout season off the edge. Anthony Lucas is projected to be a first rounder. So the USC defense, Nick, they've been doing a lot in terms of creating turnovers and sacks, kind of like Caleb Williams' Heisman year, right? The defense gave up a lot of yards, but they were able to make plays. And then they finally gave up a big play in garbage time, a 75-yard receiving touchdown. I thought Michigan State would have more success throwing the football with the talented weapons they have. The USC secondary, though, Nick, has been very inconsistent. Their run defense at times in the Big Ten, even though it's significantly improved, it still can be questionable until you see it on a consistent basis. The problem is, I want to go back to that, Nick, is they were blowing Michigan State out, and they were going to be up 4 scores. We have another silly mistake on fourth down, much like last year. Fourth down was horrible for them and costed them a lot of games, and it's still continuing, and it kept Michigan State in this contest. If you go on the road and do it against Illinois, who's going to be feisty to get back in the win column, it is going to cost you. And that's the biggest question mark with USC is can they clean up some of these silly mistakes? No pick from me as a fan of the Trojans. Where are you leaning here? We're getting like 6, 7.5 points on the road early kick for SC.
Yeah, I think USC will cover this spread and win this game by 7 to 8, maybe 10 points. When it's all said and done, I can certainly see this being an extremely close contest here because this is a big opportunity for Illinois to get right. I think this is still an Illinois team that's pretty talented, but I mean when you get boat raced like that, that's a pretty bad loss. 63-10, they got absolutely smoked by Indiana, and I wasn't super high on Illinois. I didn't think they were a playoff team. I didn't think they were a top 10 team. I thought they were getting way too much hype in the preseason and being overrated, but to lose by 53 points, I really didn't think that was going to be in the cards. I thought they looked okay against some of their weaker opponents. And yeah, they struggled against Duke at times, and they got gifted a lot of points there, but I still thought they were a good team. 21.3 points per game given up right now for this defense, about 4 yards per attempt on the ground, and 5.57 yards per play. 36.3 points per game for the offense, and 5.74 yards per play with 9 rushing touchdowns and 9 passing touchdowns. They just got absolutely torched, right? There's no other way to beat it around the bush there. They got torched by Indiana. Luke Altmaier has been solid enough so far, 70% comp rate, 855 yards, 9 touchdowns. He's been clean, playing solid football. He looks pretty good. His top target, Hank B80, has been really solid as well, 21 grabs for 300 yards and a touchdown for him. He's been good. USC, I think this is a team that's very interesting at 4-0 and a very talented team. Yeah, they were a little sloppy against Michigan State, and they were sloppy against Purdue as well, and that seems to be a continuing issue in the Lincoln Riley area. I wonder if they can finally, sort that out and clean this up by the end of the season. They're not great on fourth down again, which is not entirely surprising. They've given up 5 conversions on 7 attempts already, a 71% conversion rate for opponents so far in the young season. That's not ideal. They cannot seem to get off the field when it matters most, and that's certainly a big problem. It's tough to travel to the middle of the country from the West Coast, even if it's not always the East Coast. I still put that into the factor. But this USC offense, I think, is just too good not to win this game. 52.5 points per game, 7 yards per attempt on the ground, 15 rushing touchdowns, 9.19 yards per play, an incredible number there. 10 passing touchdowns as well for this offense, 9 for Maeva there. He's been really good. 1,200 yards passing, 71% comp rate. He's been accurate. He's been confident. He's been comfortable in the pocket here. Makai Lemon has really stepped up and been that big guy. Jacoby Lane, Lake McRae, they also have 9 grabs each, and they have been pretty solid. Lane, he's a pretty good deep threat. 26.6 yards per catch for him. Wayman Jordan has stepped up in that top back. We were wondering who would take that mantle. 445 yards rushing for him, 7.8 yards per attempt, and 3 scores, 110 yards per game on the young season here. I think the defense is showing some solid pieces. Eric Gentry, 27 tackles, all of them solo tackles, 7 TFLs, 3 sacks. He has been an absolute freak so far, really good. Bishop Fitzgerald has been really solid. Christian Price as well. Pierce has been really solid, beg your pardon, in the secondary there. Braylon Shelby has stepped up, 11 tackles for him, 5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks here. I think the offense wins this one. I think this could potentially be a shootout. Maybe not as high scoring as some other games, but I think there'll be a lot of points back and forth in the first half. But I think USC will get into a groove and win a big game on the road. I wouldn't be surprised if they struggle. They've not been particularly good in Big Ten play on the road and going to a place like Champaign, Illinois, where it's going to be loud, it's going to be tough. This is a team that's looking to bounce back. It would not surprise me at all if Illinois fights to the final death, but I think USC gets the job done here, gets a huge win for Lincoln Riley and company, moves to 5-0 and puts themselves in a really good position here. I think this is a very talented offense that should have a really good day here.
Also going down at noon, a game that's very important when it comes to the playoff because Notre Dame's hanging on by a thread after dropping 2 games early on the season to very good opponents, top 10 opponents in close fashion. So I think their playoff hopes are still alive, but just a little bit, and they'll probably need some help going on the road to Arkansas. This line's now down to 3.5 in favor of the Irish for Arkansas. This is a team that has been great on offense this year, 43.5 points per game. Taylor Green's been highly accurate, very impressive as a dual threat player. The run game's been complimentary with Mike Washington being explosive, Braylon Russell giving them nice reps as well. Omega Blake has been a big breakout receiver for them with 326 yards. Problem is they've cooled off in second half. They were hot against Ole Miss early, nothing in the second half. Memphis, complete disaster where they had 28 points, Nick. And, I told you how upset I was that I bet on them to score over 34.5. We just need a touchdown in the second half, and we only got 3 points. And then we fumble inside the 5-yard line with the game on the line. Two weeks in a row where the offenses started off great and they cool off. Those were road games. Now we're going to come back home against Notre Dame, a team that has been very sluggish on defense, especially when it comes to defending the pass. Texas A&M had their way with them. Purdue as well. I mean, they're just not covering very well. They're not making plays in space either. It's been pretty embarrassing. And this is a secondary we knew might have some struggles because of the youth at corner, but they have two veterans now, Leonard Moore and Christian Gray, that were starters last year that are also not giving them very good play. The run defense, I think, is still very solid. Boubacar Traore is tremendous. Bryce Young is stepping up. You have Jalen Sneed and Drake Bowen in the middle. This is a defense that largely got most of the components from last year outside of some difference maker at D tackle. And I don't think that's why this defense has been so sluggish against the pass. I think them breaking in, Chris Ash, a new defensive coordinator, is really causing them some issues. And now they're facing a very aggressive passing attack that's definitely going to go for home run balls often. So it's going to be up to CJ Carr to lead this offense. I think he's been respectable this year. Not great, but he definitely flexed some muscle in his first start against Miami, not backing down against Texas A&M as well, almost had 300 yards. He's not been a problem at all, and I think he's going to continue to play well. This is a passing attack that does have weapons. Malachi Fields has been splendid. Eli Raridan at tight end. Jordan Fajon, their number 3 receiver. And, of course, this run game led by Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, I think is going to be the biggest difference maker overall. I didn't think that Memphis would have that much success running the football on him, and most of it happened in the second half. 290 yards and 3 touchdowns, Nick, after how they played against Ole Miss. I thought this run D was good. Well, looks like it might not be. Now they're going to face one of the top running attacks in the country. So I think Notre Dame, they're going to be very cohesive when it comes to running the football in this game. I also think they're going to be much better on defense when it comes to creating pressure and covering a little bit more consistently. So I'm going to pick them to cover 3.5, but with how they've played so far, they're much likely to lose this game, honestly.
Credit where credit's due. This is a phenomenal scheduling to have Notre Dame come down to SEC country and play at Arkansas, a game that I never thought I'd see in a million years. That Fayetteville environment is tough when that team is playing good football. I went to a game there once. It was really loud in that stadium, and they were, giving the fans hell, and they were putting up a lot of good momentum and good energy behind that crowd. So if they jump on Notre Dame early, it could get very loud and tough in there for the Fighting Irish. This is a key game, no matter how you chalk it up, because like you said, if Notre Dame loses the one, they're done with the playoff hunt. Arkansas looking for a signature win that would save Sam Pittman's job. I think if they win this game, that saves his job, in my opinion, unless something disastrous happen throughout the rest of the season. That would be a big marquee win that he is kind of sorely lacking right now. I'm going to go out there and say it that Taylor Green is my favorite quarterback to watch in the nation. I think this kid is absolutely incredible. I love watching him play. We figured when he came into college that he was going to be really solid because he had the physical attributes, just whether or not he could get the mental aspect of the game down, make those smart decisions, and be a confident passer and runner. He's proven to me that he's both of those things right now, nearly 1,200 yards passing, 64.5% comp rate. It's probably not phenomenal, but still good enough. 12 touchdowns to 4 picks, and obviously his legs are just the absolute show. 360 yards, 8.2 yards per attempt, and 2 scores for him, about 90 yards per game so far in the young season. A very talented quarterback that is doing a lot of great things for this offense. I like what this Arkansas offense can do. 43.5 points per game, 8.12 yards per play, 6.6 yards per attempt on the ground, and 11 rushing touchdowns as a whole unit. Mike Washington, 330 for him and 4 scores, 7.2 yards per attempt. Pretty good. But Braylon Russell, 150 and 3 scores as well. So I really like that sort of versatility there. When you look at the pass catchers, Mugga Blake is the guy leading the way, although Jalen Brown and C.J. Brown are not that far behind with 11 grabs each. Blake, 326 on 24 grabs and 3 scores. He has been really good and a good leader for this team. Xavier Sorley has been a phenomenal linebacker for this team. 29 total tackles, 2 TFLs, a pick. He's been really good. Julian Neal has stepped up in the secondary, 22 total tackles, 2 TFLs, 2 picks, 4 pass breakups. I like the production I'm seeing out of him. The defense, 23.5 points per game, but 4.23 yards per attempt on the ground and 7 scores given up. They've been struggling against the run. That is clearly this team's weakness. Is if teams can run on you, you're going to put Arkansas into hell, and that's what happened against Memphis this past weekend. As for Notre Dame, they're fighting for their lives. I think you expect that out of this team right now. 40 points per game on offense, but 32.7 points per game given up on defense. Not a great number at all. I know they were in a shootout with A&M. They only lost the game by one, but they still give up 41 points to the Texas A&M team. 4.39 yards per attempt on the ground, 9 scores so far this season, 6.6 yards per play. CJ Carr, he's getting into his groove, he's getting comfortable, but again, it's not super impressive so far. 66% comp rate, 5 touchdowns, 2 picks, 740 yards passing. Really not the greatest passing catching group either. Malachi Fields, Eli Reardon, Jordan Faison, Jeremiah Love, they all have 8 to 12 pass catches there. Nothing crazy. Malachi Fields has been a good deep threat, though. 200 yards for him on the 10 grabs and the 1 score. They're able to run the ball successfully. I think that's a big key to success for Notre Dame. If they can run the ball like I think they can, they will dominate this game and beat Arkansas with ease. Love, 284 for him and 3 scores on the ground. Jadarian Price, 187, 6.9 yards per attempt and 5 scores. The game plan is pretty simple for me, right? Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. If you're Notre Dame, can you run the ball? If you're Arkansas, can you stop the run? If Arkansas stops the run, they will put Notre Dame into a very big headlock and put them into some tough positions and really make this game difficult. If Notre Dame can run the ball all over them, they are going to win this game and blow out Arkansas while doing so. I think Notre Dame will run the ball very effectively. They will run all over Arkansas and have a really strong win as they try to figure out this season and push towards the college football playoff.
Now I move to the mid-afternoon slate. Pretty loaded 3:30 games here. Going to get started with Ohio State traveling to Washington. And if you're looking at the screen, you can see I picked the Huskies to win this game outright. Instead of boring you with the details on both of these teams, I'm just going to give you a quick thesis on why I think Washington wins this game. Julian Sayin, very talented quarterback. This is a guy who's going to be making his first career road start, though. I don't think this Ohio State offensive line is really all that good. I think at some point they're going to get exposed. And I don't think Washington is going to be the team to necessarily expose them. I just don't think they're going to have a ground attack that can really, put this game on ice on the road if their quarterback is potentially struggling. Jacob Lane, Isaiah Ward, respectable edge rushers. The defensive line is going to have a tall task against the run game, but I don't think Ohio State is going to do a whole lot of damage running the football. I just don't think the interior offensive line is all that good, and I could be wrong, but I said that a lot last year. And Ohio State was a team I supported from from March all the way till January. Nick knows it as much as anybody. I kept banging on the table saying this team would win the national title, even with their offensive line issues. I still don't think they're fixed. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are phenomenal wide receivers, but Washington has a duo of corners that can be competitive. You have Ephesanius Prysock, him and his partner from Arizona, and Takario Davis, who should be healthy for this game. These guys know how to play football. They've played some very tough offenses. They're veterans. They're not just going to get burned on every single rep, right? This is going to be competitive. So the Ohio State passing attack, they're going to be looking to generate some big plays, and I don't think they're always going to be there as much as you want. So I think they can hold this offense somewhat in check. I don't think it's going to be a complete beatdown with them airing it out. And most importantly, I think Damon Williams is going to be the future of college football. He's already off to a phenomenal start. You can see the production, almost 1,000 yards in 3 games, 8 touchdowns coming off a clinic against Washington State, nearly 400 yards in that game with, was it 4 or 5 touchdowns? So this is going to be the future of college football, Nick. This guy is incredible when it comes to running the ball off his elusiveness and his twitch. His arm is incredibly strong as well. I mean, he can throw a ball 40 yards downfield into a tight window, in a flash. And of course, he has Jonah Coleman, who's leading the nation in rushing touchdowns right now. And then at wide receiver, Denzel Boston is one of the most elite pass catchers in the country. Now, we're going to need some other guys to step up. Amari Evans coming back. He's got speed out of the slot. Lorenzo Styles out of the slot, I think, is a big weakness for this Ohio State defense. So they're going to look to try to put themselves in manageable situations where they can stick to a base defense. And a lot of intel there, Nick. But at the same time, again, I think this really just comes down to Damon Williams is going to be the future of college football. This guy is unbelievable. I'm putting all my chips on the table, and they're in favor of the team in purple.
You may be putting all your chips on the table. I'm going to put half my chips on the table. I can't commit to Washington winning outright, but I can commit to them covering the spread. The spread opened at 13.5 at time of recording. It's down to 8.5, so a lot of movement there. That's a 5-point swing. Those don't come easy in terms of betting spreads. That was a lot of shift very quickly, and I think that's something to keep a certain eye on. And I like Washington State to cover the spread and be competitive. I don't think they're going to win this game. I think Ohio State gets the job done, ultimately escapes Seattle with a W, but it's tough to travel out west, tough to travel to an environment that's very underrated. One of the tougher environments in the country that people don't talk about a whole lot is Husky Stadium. And Julian Sain's not played a true road game yet. So this is an opportunity for him to show that he is really up to that challenge, a very tough environment. This Washington team, they absolutely boat raced Wazoo out in Pullman last week. They really dominated that team and looked good doing so. The defense looked good, the offense looked good, and what was a big win. While Ohio State has proven to be pretty good so far, that defense was strong against Texas, and then they really beat down on Grambling and Ohio and looked solid in those matchups here. I think this Washington team is a really intriguing team that Jed Fish has put together here that is trending really in the right direction in the Big Ten. I think Damon Williams is an incredible quarterback. I'm all over him as well. Maybe not as much as you are, but I think this is a guy that's really developing to a kid that can be a star in this sport, and he's looking really comfortable and confident in the pocket. 4% comp rate, beg your pardon, 778 for him passing, 6 touchdowns, 0 picks. He can also use his legs, which is a big asset. 220 yards for him, 6.5 yards per attempt, and 2 scores. Jonah Coleman has really stepped up and been phenomenal. 350 yards and 9 scores for him. Very impressed with that. Adam Mohammed has been solid as well, 145 and 2 scores. So there's some seriously good production out of this Washington offense. Denzel Boston has been a great receiver, 250 and 3 scores for him on 16 grabs. Jonah Coleman is involved out of the backfield as well, 8 receptions for 150 and a score. So they get him involved, which I think is always important to see in your pass catching group. 55.7 points per game, about 8 yards per play as well, and 6 yards per attempt on the ground, 15 rushing touchdowns so far. Really good numbers there. That's what you want to see out of this Washington offense. I think has looked the part so far. The defense has been pretty solid as well. Devin Bryan has been good at linebacker, 17 total tackles for him. I like the production out of him. Alex McLaughlin at safety, Jacob Lane at linebacker have both been really good players overall. I wonder if the pass rush is going to be there for this Washington team. They've lacked a pass rush so far. I think that's a big concern going forward here. It seems like their best pass rushing ability comes from guys that are playing in the secondary or linebacker. Isaiah Ward has 3 sacks, 3 TFLs, 1.5 sacks off the edge. He's really your only big asset. So I wonder if they can put pressure on Sand. That may be a big difference maker. If Sand's uncomfortable, that could really lead them to a good spot. As for this Ohio State team, Sand 79% comp rate, 779 yards passing, 8 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's got the typical suspects really stepping up for him. Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, both of them are playing phenomenal football. As expected, Smith, 20 grabs for 315 and 3 scores. Bo Jackson, CJ Donaldson, James Peoples have all been really solid on the ground. Donaldson's been a really good red zone back, like I kind of figured they would plug him in. As for the defense, the usual suspects are stepping up and looking good. Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, Davis, and Higginson are all having really good seasons already. Lorenzo Styles looks good. Jeremiah Matthews looks good. That secondary is vaunted. So I think if they want to win this game for Washington, if they want to be competitive in this game, they got to find a way to have success running the ball, attacking this front seven and defensive line for this Ohio State team that is really talented, has some great players like Cade McDonald, who has stepped up so far this season, 5.3 points per game. Ohio State is holding opponents to 3.15 yards per attempt on the ground. I think the success, though, is attack on the ground, try to find a way to get into your groove, good rhythm early on. Don't fall behind on first down. Get yourself in a good position like 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4, and really set the tempo on the ground if you want to win this game. It will be loud. It will be rowdy. I think Washington will certainly cover. I can't pull the trigger on them winning. I just cannot quite get there. I certainly get why you did it. This is a big opportunity for Ohio State to be let down on the schedule. I've been looking at that for a while. I'll take Washington cover. I think they'll be certainly competitive and make this a great contest going down in Seattle.
Another one going down at the same time, big time in the SEC. Ole Miss hosting LSU, 1.5 point favorites. They also have a quarterback that's been highly impressive in Trinidad Chambliss. He's been starting the last 2 games, and he's been doing very well. 400 plus total yards. He's got a boatload of touchdowns as well, 6 on the season. This is a team that's all of a sudden really catapulted its offense with him under center. He's got an elite receiving core, right? Harrison Wallace, Deuce Alexander, Daquan Wright, Caden Lee, and there's like 5 other guys you can name. I mean, they're just incredibly deep. They're very deep at running back as well. Keywan Lacey's been really leading the charge there. This rushing attack was sluggish against Arkansas, but they really got going against Tulane and Kentucky, and then they beat up on a weaker opponent in week 1. For Ole Miss, this offense is great, but now Trinidad Chambliss is going to be facing what people think is probably the best defense in CFB, and I think that's cooled off a little bit because the 2 top teams they've beat clearly aren't that good at playing offense. So I think the jury is still somewhat out on LSU on how elite they might be, but I'm going to go ahead and put some more chips on the table and think LSU is going to go ahead on the road and make some stops and come up in clutch opportunities. I think Harold Perkins is going to be a great spy with his versatility on Chambliss to keep him inside the pocket. And if he does want to look to evade the pocket, he's going to have Jack Pyburn staring him down on one end. And then on the other side, it's going to be Patrick Payton as well. I think these pass rushers can really win against these tackles. And I think the secondary is well coached. I think Deshaun Spears has been playing out of his mind this year. A.J. Halsey's a big-time addition out of the portal. The corners, Mansour Delane has been great. DJ Pickett as well. The true freshman's getting on the field. The corners have been playing with a lot of energy. They've been playing in sync very well. And I think for LSU, this offense is sluggish, right? It's been really disappointing so far. Seems like they're trying to do a little bit too much when it comes to trying to hammer that big play because they have so much speed they want to get exposed, like Aaron Anderson, Barry and Brown, Bauer Sharp down the field. Trey Green should be back. Chris Hilton Jr. hasn't gotten much go this year. So, I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of talent and speed in this receiving core. And for LSU, I think there's a lot of, mismatches in the Ole Miss secondary. The safeties aren't all that good. I think the corners, led by Chris Graves, are a little bit inconsistent as well. I think the run defense, even though it's a good unit, it's a respectable unit, it's not as good as it was last year, and they have given up 170 plus yards in every game this year, which that doesn't matter. LSU can't run the ball on anybody. It's pretty clear by now. We've seen over the last 2 years they can't. But if they can just get enough out of Caden Durham in these backs, I think if they can get Barry and Brown involved in the backfield, Xavier Thomas is a nice Swiss Army knife where they can stay ahead of the sticks and puts them in more favorable third and short situations, and LSU can be dangerous. I picked Ole Miss in the preseason to win this game, and it's probably a bad idea to flip my pick now with LSU. But Nick, I just got a feeling I think this defense is going to show up, and I think LSU is going to have a much better, more consistent passing attack here on the road, and it's going to allow them to barely skate by.
I want to flip here. I'm going to be different than you. I'm going to take Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss has a big opportunity to win this game at home. This has been a very intriguing battle between these teams the last couple of years, where the home team has won the last two games at each home stadium. That was a great game last year, and 2 years ago it was a phenomenal shootout at Vaught Hemingway Stadium. I think it'll be an equally incredible shootout. I think there'll be a ton of points on the board here. I think both these offenses will have a good day, and you'll see a vintage LSU offense that has not looked like that. I'll start with the Tigers. 29 points per game, unacceptable, right? Just not good enough. There's no other way to really say that this offense is just not producing at a high level. Even though they played two good teams in Florida and Clemson on defense, they're still not producing at the level that you would expect out of an offense led by a potential Heisman candidate, top Heisman candidate in the preseason, Garrett Nussmeier, who is not looking like a Heisman candidate at all. 68% comp rate, just below 1,000 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's not doing enough. He's not been good enough here. Aaron Anderson, Barryon Brown have been really good. Bauer Sharp has been really good. These guys have been solid for this team, but they cannot run the ball. This is a big problem for LSU, and that's one of the biggest reasons why they're not going to be competitive for a national title, in my opinion, is they cannot run the ball. 213 yards and 2 scores for Caden Durham on 52 attempts is not good enough. They just don't have enough depth running the ball. I thought Durham would have a good season, but he can't be a one-man show. I just think you need to have bigger depth and be able to run the ball. They're just not able really to have success on the ground, and that will certainly hold this LSU team back. 3.7 yards per attempt on the ground, 6 scores is just not good enough when you're playing the likes of Southeastern Louisiana and Louisiana Tech. Just poor numbers across the board. The defense has been really good for LSU, right? The defense has been a very strong spot so far. 9.3 points per game given up. 2.5 yards per attempt, only one rushing touchdown, 6 picks to 3 pass touchdowns given up, and 4.21 yards per play overall in the season. So the defense has been phenomenal. Keys has been really good. Wes Weeks has been absolutely phenomenal. 25 total tackles for Weeks. Keys has 30 of his own. Harold Perkins has been really good in his spy role. He's been really solid, looking to get in the backfield and create havoc. 16 total tackles, 2 TFLs, 1 sack. Very happy with him. And AJ Halsey has fit like a glove on the defensive side of the ball. In the secondary, 13 total tackles, a TFL, a pick, and a pass pickup for him. As for Ole Miss, I think bringing in Chimbliss has been a really solid move. I think Chambliss will be a great leader for this offense. I beg your pardon, I mispronounced his name the first time. He's a phenomenal quarterback. I think Kiffin knows what he's doing. He's plugging him in. He's letting him get comfortable, and he's having a phenomenal season when he's on the field. 68% comp rate, 719 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. His threat on the ground is certainly one that you have to kind of set up, and I'm sure that this LSU team will put a guy like Harold Perkins on him and spy and make things difficult. I have no doubt about that. About 200 yards rushing for him and 2 scores for Chambliss. He's been really solid. Quan Lacey has been incredible. 80 attempts, 358 yards, and 7 scores. Been really good so far this season. When you look at the pass catching group, Wallace, Deuce Alexander, Daquan Wright have all been really solid. Caden Lee, Deshaun Stribling have not really reached the heights that you expect yet, but those guys will certainly break out soon, I think. Stribling, I'm pegging him to have a solid game here. 44.8 points per game on the season for Ole Miss, 7.44 yards per play, 5 yards per attempt on the ground, 13 rushing touchdowns. I think this Ole Miss offense is kind of hitting that groove. They're finally getting comfortable, kind of getting where they want to be. The pieces are falling together with Chambliss under center here. They won last time at home. I'm expecting them to win again in a shootout here. I think Kiffin will get the job done at home. I don't know if I trust him on the road, but I feel pretty good about him winning big games at home. He looks to be pretty comfortable in that situation here. I think they knock off LSU that just cannot keep up with them on offense. I think they'll just score a ton of points. The Rebels will, and they'll put themselves in a good position to win this game and get a great, massive win in SEC country in that conference. A really big win over a great, talented LSU team. I'll take Ole Miss here. I think this team has a lot of punch, and they'll win an absolute shootout and instant classic.
Moving to Auburn and Texas A&M, look at the Tigers in the exact same situation as last week, going on the road against a top-ranked opponent as 6.5-point dogs. So let's see if we can get a victory this week. Very hard-fought game against Oklahoma. I think there's very iffy calls that did not go in their favor that significantly swung that game. I'm never a guy that really pegs how a game finishes, or results on how the refs are, but they really got the bad end of the stick last week against Oklahoma. But at the same time, the offense didn't really bail them out. The run game wasn't all that good. Jackson Arnold week one, we saw him, be a one-read quarterback. If it's not there, we're going to take off and run. Seemed very antsy. And then he seemed to eliminate that habit and create an even worse one, though, against Oklahoma, where the first read's not there. We're going to stand in the pocket and scan and just take a bunch of sacks. 10 sacks total were given up by Auburn. 7 of those charged to the quarterback. The offensive line really didn't get abused that badly. I mean, the quarterback was just standing in the pocket forever, Nick. Obviously, the secondary was doing a very good job. And A&M, they have a pretty good secondary, right? Led by Will Lee, Dees Ricks. I mean, these guys are improving. I don't think last year they were the greatest of secondaries. Bryce Anderson at safety is tremendous. And you also have Dalton Anderson as well. So there's playmakers in the secondary that can make plays in the run as well. The defensive line, DJ Hicks is going to be your top guy outside of Cassius Howell coming off the edge. And I think right tackle Mason Murphy's a bit of an iffier player. Xavier Chaplin at left tackle is a little bit better, but there's certainly winnable matchups, I think, there for A&M to come up with some stops on defense, because I think Auburn's just going to be in a lot of third and longs unless they can get that quarterback run game working. And it didn't work for either team in Norman on Saturday. And for Texas A&M, though, I think this offense is legit. And I said it after the first 2 weeks. I know they played nobodies for the most part, UTSA and Utah State. But I was like, Marcel Reed looks incredibly confident, looks very poised in the pocket, and he's loving these new free agents they got, and Mario Craver and KC Concepcion, and they've been elite. Look at this, 443 yards for Craver through 3 games. He put on a clinic against Notre Dame, almost 30 yards per reception there. And then Terry Bussey's a nice number 3. The run game is also incredibly deep with Le'Veon Moss, Ruben Owens, and then Marcel Reed has not even really used his legs a whole lot this year. I think this offense is legit for A&M, Nick, and I think Auburn, their defense is also very good. Led by a phenomenal defensive line, Malik Blockton, Keytron Allen, and Kendrick Falk. It's a very good defense, right? In their defense, their secondary, that is, has had some inconsistencies. Didn't see him as much against Auburn, but early on in the year, the safeties and corners have really been sluggish. And I think A&M, they're going to put on a clinic here. I think they're going to win this game by a little bit more of a comfortable margin. But the Tigers are scrappy, dude. And this is a game where a lot of people are going to overlook it because it really is a monster slate. But we're going to learn a lot about both of these teams, and both of these teams can mess up the SEC. Even if Auburn's not going to compete for a national title with another loss, there's still opportunities. They host Bama and Georgia. So there's a lot to learn here for both teams, Nick. This is a game I'm going to be keeping an eye on.
Interesting game this week, and last week Auburn played an interesting game in Norman, which they ended up losing here. I just do want to highlight one thing I saw. There was a big Auburn Twitter page that has like 125,000 followers that tweeted a video of one of the sacks blaming Xavier Chaplin, number 65, the left tackle, saying, "Oh, we paid big bucks for 65." The clip he used was Arnold standing in the pocket and just absolutely wasting his time. And Chaplin eventually, got beat and then ended up giving up the sack, but Arnold just stood there forever, and I think they're misplacing the blame here. I think the blame is on Arnold. I don't think Arnold had a good enough game. I think he took way too many sacks. I know there was the reffing issues at Oklahoma. There was a lot of question marks about that, and there were some questionable calls, but when your quarterback takes 10 sacks and 7 of them charged to him, I think your quarterback is a problem. I didn't think Jackson Arnold was that good of a quarterback. I still don't think Jackson Arnold is that good of a quarterback. I think he's a liability for this team. Again, a typical Auburn fashion, having the quarterback be a liability. 69 attempts, 101 attempts, 69 completions, 5 touchdowns. I don't think it's good enough from Arnold yet. 68% comp rate, 720 yards, 5 touchdowns. He has not elevated this offense, despite the fact he has incredible weapons like Cam Coleman, who has 237 yards receiving and 2 scores. He's overthrown Coleman. He's underthrown Coleman. He's not put the ball in position where Coleman is able to make a play, despite being an incredible wide receiver. Same thing with Singleton, Fields, and Malcolm Simmons. I think the quarterback play is again holding back Auburn. I think they've missed again on another quarterback, and it's continued to be their major detriment as they're not able to figure it out. As I look at the other quarterback in this situation, I think Marcel Reed's a phenomenal quarterback who is really stepping up and can really do a lot on the ground and be a big dual threat opportunity here. Jackson Arnold is not really having the best game with his legs against Oklahoma, 181 yards for him and 4 scores on the ground. While I look at a quarterback in Marcel Reed, who has been really solid, 142 and a score. He's been able to use his legs when necessary. About 6% comp rate for him, 869 yards passing and 9 touchdowns for him. He has a great wide receiver, and Mario Craver has been a phenomenal guy. They plugged him in. Mario Minecraft Craver has looked really good. 445 yards receiving, 22.2 yards to grab, 4 scores. Concepcion has been really solid as well, 227, 17.5, and 3 scores. So those are the two top targets there. Terry Busey's getting involved occasionally as well. I think he's a guy that you want to keep an eye on to develop throughout the season for this A&M team. A&M has good balance, though. They can certainly run the ball. They have Le'Veon Moss, who's been really solid for this team, 168 and 4 scores for him. Ruben Owens, I don't think they've really used his full potential yet. And then obviously Marcel Reed is the big guy on the ground. A&M 42.3 points per game so far this season, about 7 yards per play, 4.75 yards per attempt on the ground, and 6 scores. The defense giving up 28.7 points per game is probably a little high for an A&M fan, but below 4 yards per attempt on the ground, 5 touchdowns given up, and the secondary has looked pretty good at times, giving up only 635 yards on the season. When I look at the defense for Auburn, 16.5 points per game is a pretty strong number. 1.86 yards per attempt on the ground, only 1 rushing touchdown. That's pretty strong. I like that number. 32 points per game for Auburn, just about under 5 yards per attempt, 11 scores on the ground. Overall, it's just hard to picture Auburn going into hostile territory for the second week in a row and winning a game. I think they'll be certainly competitive, and it would not be surprising to me at all if they cover the spread like they were able to fight against Oklahoma. I just don't think they have enough to get the job done and win those key matchups. I think Auburn just continue to lose close games. I think part of it's coaching. I think part of it's on the quarterback, which I think are the two biggest question marks for me. I don't think they have enough to get the job done and upset A&M in Aggie land. I think it's going to be very loud at Kyle Field. It'll be very tough to win that matchup. I think Auburn will be competitive. I think they might lose by a field goal. They might lose by 4 or 5 points. They will keep this very close, but there's just something about this Tigers team. They don't have that one it factor that you need to win big matchups. They just don't have that last piece of the puzzle. They're just going to continue to fall short in SEC play. They'll be competitive all year. They'll be a pain to play against. They will be a very tough team to deal with. I think they're just going to continue to lose close games, and I think they're going to lose another heartbreaker here to A&M that gets a big win in SEC play. A&M quietly putting together a good resume with that huge win, obviously in South Bend over Notre Dame. They're putting themselves in a good spot, top 10 team, 3-0 so far. I think they get to 4-0 and continue to build a great, strong resume.
And then the cap things off, quick pick here, Indiana, Iowa. And I think the explanation is simple. And we've said it over the last couple of years with Iowa. They don't do good against the elite opponents. And I think the Hoosiers are certainly in that category now after last week's thumping, and along with how they played last year. The game plan's simple against Iowa, especially on the road in Kinnick. You got to beat them at their own game, right? Just be patient on offense. Your defense is good. Iowa's not going to move the ball on you. Start to slowly win that field possession battle. Don't let them make plays on special teams, and again, protect the football. And you're eventually going to start to open things up for your offense, and that's why Indiana's going to cover this game. The spread that is at 7.5. And that's been the theme the last couple of years, Nick, when they play like the Penn States, the Oregons, the Ohio States, right? Just be patient, beat them at their own game. You're eventually going to open up the score, and I think Indiana and Kurt Signetti know that. And Iowa, despite having a great offensive line and beating Rutgers in a shootout, I don't think they have enough, even at home, to beat this elite Hoosier squad. I won't know because it's on Peacock for some reason, but Indiana is going to cover in this contest.
It's a pretty weird thing you just said there, beating Rutgers in a shootout. Iowa beating Rutgers in a shootout in the year of our Lord 2025. That's kind of weird, a weird thing to say, but it was a shootout, 38-28 game at Piscataway last Friday. That was a phenomenal watch on national television. Iowa put up some good fight, and they really did have a great showing offensively, which you did not expect. Mark Gronowski, that is, looked okay, actually. He actually looked a serviceable quarterback here. But this Indiana team, they're a legit team, right? You can finally put them in the upper echelon of the Big Ten. I've been saying all prior to the Illinois game. They hadn't played anyone I didn't know. I thought they were legit. They looked the part, but were they a pretender or were they a contender? They're a contender. They boat raced Illinois. They absolutely killed them. They are an absolute contender, and they are a phenomenal team. Fernando Mendoza maybe is the Heisman frontrunner right now. He has looked absolutely as advertised. If you've listened to this show for a while, you know I was pretty high on him plugging in. I thought he was a perfect fit, but man, this is even smashing my high, lofty expectations for Mendoza. 14 touchdowns, about 1,000 yards passing. He's been really good. He's been able to spread it out. The defense has been really solid. There's a lot of good coaching here. Signetti, he kind of, I don't want to say he's like Saban because obviously that's a very lofty comparison, but the way that he's angry on the sidelines, getting a lot out of his guys even when they're up 50 is really positive to see if you're an Indiana fan. He's nowhere near Saban, obviously, without any national titles or anything like that, but he's coaching in sort of this serious fighting hard mentality. Obviously, he coached under Saban in the past, so I think that's where he gets it from. This Indiana team is a competitive team. They're a legit team. And Iowa, I think they've won these games. They've been competitive against some of the teams in the conference, middle of the pack teams, but they struggle against the best teams. I think Indiana is one of the best teams in the conference. I think it'll be a close game. I think it'll be a lower scoring game. They'll certainly bring this offense back down to earth for Indiana, but they get the job done in the end. They win this game and put themselves in a good position to continue racking up wins. I like what IU can do. I love this team. I think they win this game here and cover that spread.
And now we're going to move to the nightcap. We broke both these games down in full, so we'll keep it a little bit shorter. Oregon going on the road to Penn State. 3.5-point favorites are the Nittany Lions. They ended up losing in a shootout to Oregon in the Big Ten title game back in December. Ran the ball for nearly 300 yards. I mean, they had so many explosives on the ground. Oregon could just not stop them for some reason. And I think this offensive line with Anthony Doka moving to right guard is only better. I think Penn State, they still have their running backs. Drew Aller, been a little iffy this year, but they really haven't been opening things up, I don't think, too much when it comes to the pass game. I think this receiving group is also significantly better. Going to the portal and getting three guys, headlined by Trevor Pena, the pair up with tight end Luke Reynolds, who's going to be a breakout player. I think for Penn State, this offense, a lot of people probably haven't been impressed. They've also been playing nobody, and I don't think they've been showing their full hand. And now against Oregon has a inexperienced cornerback group, a secondary that might struggle in this game. A defensive line that does have great pass rushers though. Mateo Uyungale, Tatum Tuioti. These guys are great. I love Bryce Bocher in the middle, but there's also some new linebackers in there like Devon Jackson. I wonder, in Jerry Nixon as well. I wonder how much physicality these guys are going to play with. And I think for Penn State, Jim Knowles, this is going to be his first challenge as defensive coordinator here for the Nittany Lions, going up against a sophomore quarterback in Dante Moore, making his first career tough road start in a whiteout game. His top wide receiver is also a true freshman in DeCorian Moore. And, expecting these guys to just show up and I think be the saving grace for Oregon against a tough defense led by A.J. Harris and Zakee Wheatley in the secondary. They're not as deep on the defensive line, and maybe you can run the football here and win the game on the road. And I think it's certainly plausible because Oregon is physical and they have an incredibly deep running back room. Penn State's got to win this game, Nick. That it really comes down to that. Dante Moore, a very young quarterback. His top guy is very young as well. They should win this game, quite frankly. The defense is not as talented as it was last year for Oregon. PSU's got to win this game. I'm going to take them to do it. They never seem to do it, but man, they got to win this game. It's so important. -3.5. I'm going to take them to cover, win by a couple of points.
I think one of the last things you just said there is the key thing. They need to win this game, but they never seem to be able to do it. I'm a big believer in trends. I think old habits die hard, and I believe a lot in trends in college football. And I think a big trend is James Franklin cannot win the big games. He's not a big game coach. I'm going to continue to say it until it happens. When's the last time Penn State won a big game at home? Think about it. How long has it been? 5, 6, 7 years, 2019, 2017, something like that. They don't win these big games at home. They have just not been able to do so. I'm talking about playing the upper echelon, your top teams like Michigan, Ohio State. Those are the tough teams that you need to beat to get the job done and compete for a national title, and they've not been able to do so. I don't think they're going to be able to beat Oregon here. I think Oregon has just too much talent on offense, and I don't think Penn State will be able to keep and match stride for stride. I think this will be a shootout here. I think there'll be a lot of points in this one, and I think these are two offenses that are interesting offenses, but I think Oregon's just the significantly better offense, 50.8 points per game so far this season. Dante Moore has plugged in. You wonder what that would look like considering they normally go out, and plug in a quarterback like Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel, veterans of the sport. Instead, they plugged in Dante Moore. He's been phenomenal. 75% comp rate, 962 yards passing, 11 touchdowns to 1 pick. He has looked really good, even without his top wide receiver who they lost in the preseason. DeCarian Moore, Malik Benson have both have over 200 yards. They've been really solid on 10-plus grabs. Gary Bryant has 10 grabs as well. They're spreading the wealth. They're getting a lot of people involved. They're spreading the wealth on the ground as well. Lamar Hill, Whittington, Jordan and Davidson are all getting touches. They're all getting a lot of different opportunities. This has been a very effective rushing attack so far, which is releasing some of the pressure on Dante Moore. 6.75 yards per attempt on the ground, 14 touchdowns on the season for Oregon. Really strong numbers here. I don't trust the quarterback at Penn State. I don't trust Drew Aller to win this game. I just don't think he's been good enough against their subpar opponents early on. Below 65% comp rate, 626 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. Yes, the receiving core is better. I think Trevor Pena and Kyron Ware-Hudson are pretty solid, but I think this is going to be a shootout here, and I think the offense that's better, I'm going to take in that situation, and for me, that's Oregon. I think Oregon comes on the road and wins a great matchup at Penn State in the whiteout. A phenomenal matchup, right? Obviously a top 10 matchup, this type of stuff you look for in the new Big Ten, but I just think Oregon has just too much talent. I don't trust James Franklin in these big games. I'm going to take Oregon here, and this is a phenomenal matchup, and I want to give a quick shout out to the nice couple I met today that are from Oregon that are traveling this game in Happy Valley. I hope you guys have fun. I hope it's a It's a great contest. Overall, I'm super excited for this one, but I think Oregon's going to get the job done. They just have too much talent on offense, and they will win an instant classic shootout.
Now we're going to look at the SEC contest between Georgia and Alabama. This game's not as monumental as it was last year. Still a lot of high stakes, though. Alabama coming off a great game from its passing attack against Wisconsin. Ty Simpson showcasing a lot of confidence and nice pinpoint accuracy. Ryan Williams finally having a breakout game. Jeremy Bernard continues to be an elite player for Bama. The thing is Alabama's incredibly one-dimensional. This run game is just not very good. It wasn't very good last year. Jam Miller comes back, and that's going to add some pop and maybe some explosion. More importantly, I think maybe in the receiving game than it is on the ground. In Georgia, on the other hand, coming off a horrible game from its secondary. We talked about it. We thought these corners would be a bit of a liability maybe for Georgia this year. Guys like Dalen Everett, Ellis Robinson, he was not very impressive. But it was kind of shocking to see them get absolutely scorched against Tennessee. Even when they had come up with a couple of stops in a row and had some momentum for them, they started getting beat right again. So a lot of these were just like 50-50 balls. And even though they were in too high looks at times, they were still kind of getting out schemed and giving up big plays. Jonell Aguero out of the slot. KJ Bolden at safety played pretty good games. But the corners were just abysmal. And so that's why this game is all of a sudden a lot more intriguing because, it was a tale of two different performances a couple of weeks ago for both of these squads. For Georgia, though, this is a team that still has an elite linebacking group. Raylan Wilson and C.J. Allen, the backups as well, are X5 stars of incredible athletic ability. Gunnar Stockton, he manned up real fast in Knoxville, so they needed help from this offense, and he was able to deliver, keep them in the game, and then he ended up throwing a beautiful touchdown on fourth down, the two-point conversion. They ended up getting the job done in OT. He had 300-plus yards, 2 touchdowns, did some work with his legs as well. The run game for Georgia, it's not like it's significantly better than Bama's. I think it is, and they have a few more bodies that are better, but I don't think they have any difference makers really in the backfield. The physicality from the offensive line's kind of wearing off compared to years past. The play calling, I think, from Mike Bobo is still pretty important. They had 55 carries just to barely, not even hit 200 yards rushing against Tennessee. So the run game was respectable, and I think against Alabama, this is a team you've seen struggle despite having an elite defensive line when it comes to, that physical battle and getting beat downhill. And I think Stockton's legs might get involved a little bit as well. He's not going to beat you, east-west by any means, but I think instead of when it comes to staying ahead of the sticks, Georgia's going to do that well on offense, and I think their defense is going to bounce back. And I think their ability to rush the passer with a variety of different blitzes, especially from the nickel. And I think the secondary is going to, potentially out-scheme Alabama here. I think when it comes to individual efforts, these guys are all going to play better. I'm going to take the Bulldogs to finally get a win over the Tide here. I'm going to take them to cover, and I think they're going to win by double digits.
This is a very intriguing game, and I said in the last when I was talking about Oregon and Penn State that I'm a big believer in old habits and old traditions and trends in college football. And I'll give you another one: Alabama 8-2 over their last 10 against Georgia. Yes, I know the guy that was coaching 9 of those games is sitting at the game day booth, but Kalen DeBoer got a big win last year in Tuscaloosa. What was an incredible game, an instant classic, one of the best college football games ever. Certainly one of the best regular season games ever, if not the best regular season game. A phenomenal matchup here, and I think DeBoer will head into this situation and find themselves a good spot. Alabama's beaten Georgia in Tuscaloosa. They beat them in Atlanta. They beat them in Athens. They beat them really anywhere but Indianapolis. I think this is a big opportunity for them to get a huge win in conference play and set the tone right after what was a slow start against Florida State. Ty Simpson has turned things around, and I didn't think he was the biggest problem against Florida State. I thought there were a lot of other issues. I didn't really want to talk about it a whole lot, obviously, because it was tough to be positive after Alabama lost to Florida State, but I think he has was really solid in that game, and he's getting better and looking a lot better overall. I think Ty Simpson is developing into the quarterback we thought he could be. 72% comp rate, 862 yards passing, 9 touchdowns. Ryan Williams, if he plays like he did against Georgia last year, which was his coming out party, then he'll be a phenomenal asset and really be strong. He's been blowing hot and cold, hit or miss, but last week he was really good against Wisconsin, had that great toe tap that ended up in a touchdown. He did have a bad drop in the end zone, so keep an eye on his hands. He got 10 grabs, 195 yards, and 2 touchdowns across 2 games. Jeremy Bernard's probably the best player on Alabama, full stop. He's been phenomenal this year. 15 grabs for him, 275 on 3 scores. Look for him to be targeted early and often here. Getting back Jam Miller is certainly a big thing, but there have been some other issues potentially in terms of injuries I want to keep an eye on. Jamarian Latham, I believe he got injured at practice today, so I don't know if he's going to be going in this game against Georgia, so keep an eye on that as well. Deontay Lawson, Bray Hubbard, Justin Jefferson all looked better the last 2 weeks after a pretty abysmal showing from the defense across the board in week 1. What defense will you get if you get the defense the last 2 weeks? This will be a competitive, close game, certainly. As for Georgia, they're a pretty talented team. As you know, Gunnar Stockton's looked pretty good as well. He's been solid under center for this team, 71% comp rate, 721 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. A little bit worse stats than Ty Simpson, but he's been pretty solid. He had a really good game in a hostile environment against Tennessee last week. The secondary, though, is the big concern for me for Georgia, right? This is the biggest issue potentially, is that they just don't really look like a Georgia secondary. Can Ty Simpson get the chance to pick that team apart? If he's in the pocket, he has protection. If these tackles, particularly Wilkin Formby and Caden Proctor, are able to protect Ty Simpson, he could pick you apart all day and he will attack and be salivating at the secondary for Georgia that has not looked like themselves. That's the biggest matchup I'm watching. Can those tackles hold up strong against a pass rush for Georgia? That's always good. If the O line as a whole stands up, they don't commit penalties, they're smart, they don't do anything stupid, they give Ty Simpson a lot of time, Alabama could certainly fight in this game and put up a really strong showing on the road in Athens.
Now, after those games commence, we'll be looking at Colorado and BYU. A bit of a trap game here for the Cougars. They beat the hell out of Colorado in that famed duo's final game in the Alamo Bowl. Colorado's gonna be looking for some redemption. Bear Bachmeier making his first career, true road start. Played at ECU, last week, but who cares? I mean, he played well. I think the run game with L.J. Martin and a couple of his receivers and Chase Roberts, Parker Kingston are pretty good players. But these late night games, especially in the Big 12 when BYU's involved, Nick, always seem to have something strange happen. And I think for Colorado, Caden Salter, they plugged him back in at quarterback. 300 plus passing, 3 touchdowns. He also ran for nearly 70 yards and another score. Message received, right? He got benched for a game, comes back, puts on a clinic. It was against Wyoming, sure, but Utah also just played Wyoming a couple weeks ago, Nick, and they weren't nearly as effective as Salter, I thought, was. The receivers started to come alive a little bit. Sincere Brown, Amari, and Miller were making big plays. I think the run game with Salter's legs is certainly a little bit more improved. It's still not great. They're not going to overwhelm you at all. But Salter, he's more of a physical guy. He can stay ahead of the sticks when it comes to running the ball. I think the defensive line for Colorado, even though the run defense has not been as good as I expected this year, it's bound to come alive at some point. Led by Arden Walker, Amari McNeil, Keaton Wade's a nice edge rusher. I think they're going to force BYU to be really sluggish on offense. I think the under is probably a good play in this one, 47.5. Not a big total by any means. But I expect to see more of a defensive game. I think Colorado 6.5 is going to cover. I think BYU, they're great. Their defense led by Isaiah Glasker and Jake Kelly is phenomenal. And last time they played Shedeur Sanders, nothing was available downfield. The pocket was getting collapsed very often. But I think Colorado, Nick, this is a team that has not started off the year very well. Nobody really seems to care about the Buffaloes either, and I think that's probably a good thing for them. Take away some of the spotlight, and I think they can shock somebody here. So I don't know if they're going to win, but I think they're going to keep this one close and cover. I still think the fans are going to show up for the Buffaloes here at Folsom Field. It's going to be a close game, so I'm going to take them to cover 6.5 in favor of Colorado.
This is a very interesting matchup going on late night. I think this is a really intriguing game between two very interesting teams. In the Big 12, obviously, Colorado always has the very interesting status of being that team. And I think they're a very fun team to watch. While BYU obviously had a big late offseason swing with a new quarterback being plugged in, and Bear Bachmeier, who has looked good so far. 66% comp rate, 518 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. I think he's been solid. They've been good on the ground. LJ Martin, 342 yards, 8.6 yards per attempt, 1 score. Bachmeier's been the guy in the red zone. He's been really solid. 6.48 yards per attempt on the ground, about 7 yards per play. So they're really a run-first offense, 41.3 points per game so far for this BYU team. That's been really solid. They're really running through LJ Martin. They're letting him really steal the show. Chase Roberts, 185 yards and 1 touchdown. But it's really been the LJ Martin show has been really solid. A couple other backs here have a couple touches for some points. The defense has been solid for this team. 5.3 points per game so far through 3 games. They really shut down Stanford and Portland State. Obviously FCS Portland State, but they shut down Stanford in week 2, and then they dominated East Carolina on the road this past week. 1.6 yards per attempt on the ground, giving up only 1 touchdown. They have 4 interceptions, no passing touchdowns. They only give up 1 touchdown on the entire season so far, which obviously is very impressive when you look at it from that regard. They're playing a tougher competition here in Colorado. It seems like the quarterback carousel has finally stopped in Boulder, as Deion has decided to plug Salter back in and let him go all the way after giving some opportunities to Ryan Staub and really moving things around. Salter, he has been good enough, really not phenomenal. 60% comp rate, 565, 4 scores. Obviously, his legs are certainly involved. He's the leading rusher on the team, 153 and 3 scores. Michael Welch, 143 and a score. They still really can't run the ball. At Colorado, Simeon Price has 143 and 2 scores as well. They have a good pass catching group that's got a couple different guys. Omari Miller has 10 grabs, 181. DeCullion Taylor, the back, has been solid in the backfield, 100 yards for him and 2 scores. The defense has been solid at times. Reginald Hughes has been a really good leader. Martavius French has been solid as well. Each of them have over 20 tackles. Stoudemire in the secondary has been good, and Preston Hodge has 5 pass breakups, been a good leader for this unit overall. 27 points per game, 22.5 points per game given up for this Colorado team. They've struggled a little bit against the pass at times. They've been a little bit vulnerable to that situation here. Not that Bachmeier's a super talented passer or anything like that, but something about this game, I think BYU goes and wins this game. I think they're a really talented roster that's getting into their groove. They're really building a good offensive line and a good defensive line. I think Bachmeier will be comfortable here. This game is a very intriguing one. I think it'll be a lower scoring one when it's all said and done, but I think BYU gets the job done. A late night game on the West Coast is quite interesting and a very intriguing matchup in this conference. I'll take BYU plus the points here. I don't feel incredibly confident about it, but I think the Cougars have enough to get the job done.
So we have for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.
Left.